as a continuation of the entire Titans are evil, they're the bad guys, there is a ton of brand new lore that continues the entire storyline from the Shadowlands. We have data mined a bunch of Titan sort of top secret books in Uldaman, and now we are discovering some lore that changes everything from the ground up. Looks like we may be going to a new Zereth Mortis called Zereth Ordus, which is obviously for the beings of order, and there is also brand new lore about the old gods and the Black Empire that the Titans have apparently been hiding from us. Furthermore, we are finally learning about the first ones from a Titan perspective. So what is all this new information, and what even is Zereth Ordus? If you guys are looking for a really cool small-scale MMORPG, check out Scars of Honor, this video's sponsor. This game is built by a small but very passionate team, and they're heavily influenced by their community. You can literally follow the development of the game in real time and help them build their game. Right now in October, they're doing a playable test for all the supporters. They just added swimming, the party system, a bunch of really cool free and paid mounts. There is the horse, the really cool bear, the snail that looks super cool and unique, and even a fish underwater mount. Additionally, they just added the undead and the dwarves as playable races. You can check out the game completely free and follow the development as they have a Discord server, but if you really want to help out, you can get a supporter or an honored account, which is going to provide you with a bunch of perks as well as being able to participate in the test. So make sure to use my link in the description and check out Scars of Honor. If you guys have watched my previous videos, you might have realized that Blizzard is continuing the process of making the Titans a lot more great than they used to be, and some people would say they are even turning them evil. In the previous video, I speculated about this, but with this new information, they pretty much all but confirmed that they will become evil. Not exactly all-out evil, but let's say they aren't exactly the good guys. Furthermore, a lot of people might not like this idea, but Blizzard is definitely not going on the route of like, let's forget Shadowlands ever existed, and instead they are just doubling down on the lore that they had established in the previous, or at the moment the current expansion. So I'm not going to bore you with the previous information, I'm only gonna give you the new one, but if you want to learn more about these spoilers, check out the previous two videos I made. Long story short, it was Yogg-Saron that corrupted Galakrond through the water supply, and then the Titans purified this water supply in order to turn dragons to their side, or as they said, to align them with the Titans' philosophies. Now, the new information may be even more groundbreaking than anything else we had discovered before, and this is a book called Edicts of the Prime Designate. Keep in mind, the previous information was like a report, a private letter exchange between the Titan Keepers, but this is an edict, which is essentially like a public service announcement, or simply put, an order from the Prime Designate Odin. If you may remember, Odin was originally the main Titan Keeper guy, but then he didn't align with his brethren, so he decided to do his own thing and create the Halls of Valor, and then the entire thing, like, he was cut off from everything. This edict that he wrote is potentially some of the most groundbreaking lore information that we have gotten in years, as it definitely just shakes the core of everything we know about the Titans and the Black Empire. He starts the edict by talking to the Keepers, aka his own pantheon. Now, keep in mind, the entire tone of this writing is that he's kind of just letting them know that we are not equals, so he's essentially just bossing them around. But so he says this: it has been brought to my attention that, as of late, many of you have become fascinated by the emergence of mortal beings, that is, creatures born of flesh rather than crafted of stone and steel, like our loyal Titan Forge. While my initial impulse was to eradicate these aberrations before they evolved further, I now believe they may prove useful if properly controlled. Yet, even as we guide their development according to the edicts of the Titans, we must always remember that mortal minds are destined to be small and incapable of complex understanding. So, as you can tell, he's talking about many of the native races of Azeroth, such as the dragons and us as well, and he doesn't exactly like them or like us, calling us aberrations. Talks about controlling and how he sought to completely destroy the mortals, but he decided against it. If this doesn't tell you that the Titans are not the good guys, I really don't know what more proof that you need. Plus, the Titans even apparently have edicts about the mortal races, like what they should do. Obviously, they aren't all bad, as the rest of the Keepers did take on interest in mortals, seeing that they empower the dragons, but obviously, these guys are not the benevolent protectors we believe them to be. Plus, even this protective attitude could just be manipulation, so we can just serve their mission and become minions of their own. Then Odin continues, gives a few, how do you say, regulations, as he calls them, but essentially he just gives out orders, and brace yourself because these are some really big reveals. First, all historical records documenting the advancement of the Black Empire are to be purged immediately. Paint that age as one of chaos and misery, a pernicious blight that we Keepers eradicated. With the old gods locked in confinement, there should be no evidence available to contradict our assertions. Surely, if you care for these mortals, you would not wish to see them led astray into darkness. So, this is a really big one, and it continues on the old speculation, and that is that the Void may not be so bad after all. Let's not get ourselves that the old gods are these benevolent beings, but it turns out that the picture that we have of the Black Empire as this chaos empire built in lava and suffering and destruction and just that end world scenario may not be so accurate after all. As Odin says, they want to deny the advancement of the Black Empire civilization, and he wants them painted as just darkness incarnate, and that there was literally zero good that came out of it. Then comes the even more interesting part of this edict, which is the continuation of the first one, lore from the Shadowlands. Second, attribute all accomplishments and works of wonders to the Titans alone. Despite the relentless arguments made by some of you, this is not a fallacy. After all, can anything truly be said to exist until it has been ordered? Of course not. Therefore, it is irrefutable that the Titans are the source of all creation. This is a super interesting one, but before we continue, let's examine the last thing he says, as it directly ties into this point. Third, teach them nothing of the first ones. Mortals could not conceive of the wonders these beings granted to the Titans in Zereth orders, and learning of the progenitors would only confuse them. It is enough that mortals know that Titans brought order to the cosmos, and they are owed deference. This, in my opinion, just completely changes all Titan lore that we know of. First, most importantly, the Titan Keeper Odin calls the first one progenitors, despite being a minion of the Titans himself, meaning he recognizes these beings as the true creators of everything and that the Titans are below them. He pretty much confirms that the Titans didn't create anything and that they're subordinate to the actual gods, the first ones, and that they were granted something in Zereth orders, some type of power. This is really not new lore, actually, if you can follow the hints in the Shadowlands. Apparently, there is a Zereth for every cosmological force, and there are 6 of them. Zereth Mortis was for the Death Realm, the place where we went to, and Zereth Orders would be for the order part of the cosmology chart. This also continues on the book and the findings of Farim the Broker, where he talked about how the Titans claimed to have built things, but they only inherited it, and Odin here confirms it. It seems like they have specific propaganda for the mortals to see them as the only true gods, which is literally what we had discovered in this kinda top secret edict. Then Odin continues on the dogma that the Titans spread about how nothing can be created unless it is ordered, which is obviously their point of view because they're the beings of order. However, an interesting question is, what are these works of wonder that we're currently attributing to the Titans on Azeroth that were built by the first ones? I really doubt it is the Titan facilities, as those have been used by the Thunderforge. It makes sense that they were built by the Titans, so it may be something related to the World Soul or something we will only discover now in Dragonflight, something we don't really know of. Another thing is, Odin doesn't want us to know anything about the first ones and wants us to see the Titans as the actual creators of everything. However, apparently the first ones granted the Titans their power in Zereth Orders, and if Zereth Mortis is anything like Zereth Orders, I'm almost 100% certain that the first ones literally created the Titans just how they created the Eternal Ones with all those prototypes and all this stuff behind the scenes. This could honestly have huge implications for what is to come. Now, interestingly enough, Odin ends this edict, this entire thing, by saying this: I remind you that I speak with the authority of the Titans, and any further dissent may cause me to question whether you have succumbed to the outside influences. Remember, life is chaos. It must be controlled. This essentially confirms the fact that the Titans are kinda tyrannical and dogmatic, and also asserts that Odin doesn't exactly consider the rest of the Titan Keepers as equals, but he pretty much just threatens them to stop discussing things and doing things that goes against their orders. As you may be aware, later down the line, Odin was no longer the main guy, and we know the others were a bit more tolerant of the mortals, but as we had discovered with their conversion of the dragons, which might have been forceful, this might not really have been benevolence, but they literally just decided to use us as weapons. So it looks like the Shadowman storyline will continue, and the main focus of the Dragon fight will be on the first ones and the cliffhangers we were left with in 9.2. It is heavily foreshadowed that the Titans are becoming a lot more grey, and Blizzard is definitely just doubling down on the crazy cosmology storyline. In my opinion, right now this actually has a lot of potential and could prove to be incredibly interesting. The only thing is we would need some really good execution of this Dragon fight, because if we got a new Shadowlands, these retcons and changes are going to be even more devastating than they were in the Shadowlands. The Titans are some of the more iconic beings in all the Warcraft universe, and really beings that shaped the lore at the peak of World of Warcraft back in that. So if they completely just lost their significance and if their storyline isn't done well, I think this can be pretty bad for the lore in general. Thank you for watching. Check out my previous video on the Titans Evil by clicking on the screen, and check out Doran's Academy for videos of real world history. See you next time.